we would.
Hello and welcome. I'm Thomas Porteous and you're watching the World Report on NewsX World. Let's take a look at some of the top stories of the hour. President Donald Trump delivers a speech from the White House, highlighting his achievements and setting out parts of his agenda for the year ahead. He blames former President Joe Biden for immigration and inflation problems as polls show public frustration with the economy, while Trump argues his record deserves greater support. European Union leaders gather in Brussels to try to agree on a major loan to fund Ukraine's military and financial needs for the next 2 years. The talks focus on how to cover most of the 137 billion euros the IMF says Ukraine needs. Ukrainian drone strikes hit a tanker docked at the Russian port of Rostov-on-Don, killing and injuring several people, according to the city's mayor. Russian officials say the attack sparked a fire on the vessel, with emergency teams moving in to extinguish the blaze. Taiwan says the United States is moving ahead with an $11.1 billion arms package, the largest ever for the island. The deal, the second under President Donald Trump's current administration, comes as China steps up military pressure on Taiwan, which Beijing claims as its own. Israeli troops fire a mortar over the ceasefire line into a Palestinian residential area in Gaza, wounding at least 10 people, according to local health officials. The Israeli military says the round veers off course during an operation near the so-called Yellow Line and says the incident is under investigation. Meanwhile, the United Nations and 200 other aid groups warn humanitarian operations in Gaza risk collapse over what they call a vague and politicized Israeli registration process. They say dozens of groups face deregistration by December the 31st and closure within 60 days. Brazil's Senate approves a bill that would reduce the prison sentence of former President Jair Bolsonaro over an alleged coup plot, passing it 48 to 25 after lower house approval. The measure now goes to President Lula da Silva, who says he will veto it. The gunman who kills 2 Brown University students remains at large 4 days after opening fire inside a classroom in Providence, Rhode Island. Authorities say there is still no identification of the suspect, leaving the community on edge. China's foreign ministry has responded on the US arms sales to Taiwan by urging the US to implement the commitment made by the US President Donald Trump, and also US should immediately cease any dangerous act of arming Taiwan. The ministry has claimed that US aid to Taiwan will only bring fire to self. The ministry has also stated that China firmly opposes and strongly condemns the US sale seriously to damage the peace and stability in the Taiwan Strait. China has accused the United States of violating the One China principle. Meanwhile, China's Commerce Ministry has urged the EU for an investigation for the definition of foreign subsidies is vague and exceeds bounds which is set by international norms. However, the United States has approved for $11.1 billion worth in arms sales to Taiwan, the largest ever US weapons package for the island, which is under increasing military pressure from China. Taiwan's defense ministry has said that the proposed arms sales cover 8 items, including HIMARS rocket systems, howitzers, javelins, anti-tank missiles, Altius loitering munitions drones, and parts for other equipment. We're now joined by Dr. Satoru Nagao. He's a fellow at the Hudson Institute and he joins us live from Tokyo. Thank you very much for joining us, Dr. Nagao, here on NewsX World. Of course, the largest sale of arms in the history of the island. Of course, $11.1 billion, apologies, is nothing to be snuffed at. What are your thoughts in the timing of this purchase by Taiwan and, of course, from the United States as well?
This is very good timing, I believe, because recently, because of the ambiguity of the President Trump's remarks, some experts pointed out U.S. hesitation involves the Taiwan crisis. Of course, in my opinion, this is U.S. will support Taiwan and the U.S. will defend Taiwan. But it is also true that some experts worry about this attitude of the United States. So that's why this time the U.S. decided to send many weapons to Taiwan. And that size is big, and view from the contents, the HIMARS, Harpoon, Javelin, these missiles, very effective defense capability of Taiwan. So that's why the U.S. show the act to support Taiwan is a very effective way to persuade some concern concerning people of the U.S. attitude toward Taiwan. So that is very good timing, I think. And be from the HIMARS or Harpoon or Javelin or this missile, indeed the range is lesser than 200 kilometers or more shorter. So that's why this is quite defensive. So China do not need to worry about this if China will not invade Taiwan. So that's why this is also the good thing, I think.
Yes, and of course, $11.1 billion. We've had some of the military equipment named, which includes the HIMARS rocket systems, the howitzers, the Javelin anti-tank missiles. These are pretty substantial bits of military equipment. Taiwan, do you think that Taiwan, if push did come to shove and China did in fact invade Taiwan militarily, this would help the Taiwanese defend the island, self-governing island in these circumstances?
Of course, some cases Taiwan needs a strike capability to destroy the ammunition dump or the missile launch pad or the air base, something like that to defend Taiwan. But at the same time, it is also true that just exporting or donating this kind of the strike capability to Taiwan means that more offensive message toward China. So that's why this time the U.S. focusing on what defense capability, defensive defense in this case, when China use landing ship or, to Taiwan, in this case, HIMARS or Harpoon or Javelin is effective weapon to destroy landing ship or landing troops. That is within Taiwan and a little bit far from Taiwan, but not reach deep inside of the continent. So, view from this is very effective defensive defense weapon. And in Ukraine, there are many instances these weapons are effective the last some years. So that's why these weapons are quite a trustworthy weapon for the defensive defense. So this is very effective way to strengthen Taiwan defense capability without pushing China too much, I think.
Dr. Nagel, thank you very much for joining us here on NewsX World. It's a pleasure to have you on the program as always. We move on for our next story and over to the United States. And President Donald Trump has stalled politically charged plaques beneath the portraits of past presidents in the White House Rose Garden colonnade. The plaques, many of which reportedly are written by Trump himself, offer sharp critiques of his predecessors, particularly Joe Biden and Barack Obama. Biden's plaque calls him the worst president in American history, accusing him of causing a series of crises, including the Afghanistan withdrawal and the Ukrainian war. Obama's plaques criticizes his role in the Russia investigation and labels him a divisive figure. Both plaques also reference Hillary Clinton's 2016 loss to Trump. These plaques are part of Trump's broader efforts to reshape the White House, which includes renovations to the Rose Garden and the construction of a new ballroom in the East Wing. While Trump defends the plaques as eloquent historical reflections, critics argue they are, of course, politically motivated attacks. Of course, Donald Trump is seen to be still holding a grudge over his 2020 election loss. Joe Biden, of course, a frequent appearance in his speeches where he slams the US president. Technically the only president to have beaten him in an election over the past 3 times that he has run. Donald Trump, of course, disputes the 2020 election results which have been proven by experts and analysis. Donald Trump does reiterate that the election in 2020 was rigged, the one that Joe Biden did in fact win. Donald Trump first, of course, winning the presidency in 2016, losing the popular vote, but winning the Electoral College over former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton. Donald Trump, of course, has had his spats with Barack Obama in the past over various issues. However, both have had positive interactions, one being when Donald Trump was handed the White House in 2017 in January, and the other, of course, more recently at the funeral of Jimmy Carter, where Donald Trump was seen smiling along with the former president. Okay, now joining us is Major General Sudhakar. He is an international relations and defense expert. He joins us live from Jaipur. Thank you very much for joining us here on NewsX World. It's always a pleasure to have you on the program. We've just seen, Dr. General G, these inscriptions that have been written under the portraits of the iconic Rose Garden walkway of all the US presidents. The White House, of course, has always been a symbol of institutional continuity. What do you think about Donald Trump reportedly writing his own descriptions for United States presidents, particularly, of course, his predecessors and Democrats, Barack Obama and Joe Biden?
Thomas, good afternoon. Thank you for getting me for your show. My take on the whole issue is that Donald Trump has made a perfidy of justice and equanimity in the rules-based international order, wherein he has defied the rule of law in the very country which is supposed to be an epitome of some kind of a civilizational institution providing guidance for the democratic norms. In that, I would say that this is the least of the things one was expecting from a high office of the President of USA. I, for one, I would hold it in very, very low esteem because the President of this superpower is not only supposed to be the highest body or an organ in the United States, but also a respected platform in the global order today. Whatever he does, he speaks or he gestures or any kind of activity which goes against the traditional and accepted norm, I think it calls for some kind of a scrutiny and some kind of very objective investigation as to why it has been done. It should not be ignored on the face value. That is one part. Second part is, these are my personal views. They may be in contradiction with the public. I personally feel it's about time that United States, under the leadership of Donald Trump, grows out of retributions, grows out of vindictiveness, grows out of paranoia of what people are after him. He is one with a thumping majority and uncalled for in preceding 30, 40 years of any kind of elections that have taken place, presidents who have come to power. And therefore, I think the magnanimity in his behavior and gesture and decision making would contribute towards his overall image building and restoration of the credibility which he claimed to have during the campaigning, election campaigning, before he came to power in 2.0. Back to you, Thomas.
Yes, and of course this is Donald Trump double downing on his common rhetoric of slamming Joe Biden as a legitimate victor in the 2020 US election. Of course, Joe Biden, currently suffering with cancer, had to withdraw from the 2020 electoral race over concerns over his health. Why do you think Donald Trump keeps referring to him? Joe Biden's term is over. Do you think Donald Trump is using Joe Biden as a sort of springboard to and a deflector? What are your thoughts on his continued slamming of the Biden administration?
Absolutely. You are spot on. In your question lies the answer. You see, if you allow me to dilate, you see, these are all, if you carry out an analysis of the individual behavior, every human being has got different kinds of response metrics to a particular situation. So one of the things is that at a particular age and beyond that age, one is always, unfortunately, this is against the scientific analysis. You are only drawing parallels or comparing yourself with others, while throughout the life we have been heard or we have preached to the people that never compare yourself with others. Just compare yourself with, be a golfer, he's a keen golfer. I'm afraid he doesn't follow the finest of tenets or the smallest of the guideline of golfing, of being a good golfer. You don't play with others, you play yourself to improve yourself. It's unfortunate that Joe Biden has been made as a kind of a comparative dashboard to reflect and also to prop up the image of Donald Trump, number one. Number two, also show down Democrats in such a ugly manner, which is not desirable in a country like USA. It's unfortunate that there are no substitutes, effective or I would say viable substitute of Joe Biden, but Joe Biden is the people's choice. So therefore, it would do well for Donald Trump that he is not only using Joe Biden as a springboard to propel himself, that he is far, far greater and better in performance and also living up to the commitment that he has made to make America great again. But unfortunately, the reality is on ground is something contradictory to what he has been claiming and what he has been articulating from place to place wherever he is appearing in public domain. Back to you, Thomas.
Yes, Major General Sudhakar, do stay with us as we have further updates coming out of the United States for our viewers. And former US Special Counsel Jack Smith has defended his investigation into US President Donald Trump before a House panel. Smith told lawmakers that the basis for the prosecutions rested entirely on Trump and his actions. He testified behind closed doors before the Republican-led House Judiciary Committee after being subpoenaed by its chair, Jim Jordan. Smith said he would have brought the same cases against any president, regardless of party. His team secured indictments in 2023 over classified documents and efforts to overturn the 2020 election. Both cases were dropped after Trump won the 2024 election due to a policy against prosecuting a sitting president. Republicans called the probe political. Democrats said Smith's testimony should have been public and warned Trump's actions posed a serious threat to American democracy. We move on over to Europe next, and leaders are locked in tense talks over how to finance continued support for Ukraine, with Belgium emerging as a key holdout amid concerns over financial and legal risks. Belgian Prime Minister Bart de Wever said the most likely option remains using headroom in the EU budget. calling it cheaper and safer than the alternatives, but stressed that Belgium has not yet seen a proposal it can agree to. At the heart of the dispute is a proposal to use profits from immobilized Russian assets or back a reparation-style loan for Ukraine. De Wever warned there is no legal precedent for such a move and said current guarantees offered to Belgium fall short. He insists the entire EU must share the financial risk with binding guarantees in writing, particularly to protect Belgium-based Euroclear and shield against possible Russian countermeasures, including asset confiscation. EU Commission President Ursula von der Leyen said it was positive that the EU had committed itself to closing Ukraine's financing gap, while Polish Prime Minister Donald Tusk urged leaders to act decisively, warning Europe faces a stark choice: money today or blood tomorrow. We now move on, and Australian Prime Minister Anthony Albanese has pledged to intensify efforts against hate speech following a deadly attack on a Hanukkah celebration at Sydney's Bondi Beach. The attack, which killed 15 people, including a 10-year-old, has raised concerns over rising anti-Semitism in the country. Albanese has announced plans for new legislation to target hate speech, increase penalties and make it easier to cancel visas for individuals promoting violence. The alleged gunmen, father and son, Sajid and Naveed Akram, are believed to have been inspired by Islamic State. Albanese confirmed the attack as tragic and cruel and stressed the need for stronger action. Investigations continue into potential links between the gunmen and Islamic State networks in the Philippines. As anti-Semitic incidents rise, including a recent threat on a flight, the government's response signals a firm stance on combating hate and violence in the country. We are now joined by Dr. Satura Nagal once again. He is a fellow at the Hudson Institute. Dr. Nagal, what do you think the effectiveness is going to be of combating this hate speech, especially in the year of 2025, where online extremism remains rife? Do you think this just increases the risk of just pushing this extremism underground?
How to deal with extremism is a very psychological matter in some cases. So that's why this preventing hate speech itself is part of the counter-terrorism tactics. But at the same time, in case of Australia has already done the many things in not only this hate speech issue, but also the accessing the gun is very limited and restricted. And indeed, in case of this perpetrator, the Australian Intelligence Service has checking their move in the past. So, view from this, indeed, Australia tried to show relatively strong effort, but finally they failed this time. So that's why the Australia need to do more strong measure and focusing on many issues, regular check of the activity or the not giving the license of the gun permanently, or this time the checking the hate speech. So this kind of more strong measure is needed. So, of course, Australia must do in this case because they fail to prevent terrorism. But at the same time, because Australia is a democratic country, how to secure the right of the under the democratic rule is also needed. That's why the view from the Australian government, this is a little bit sensitive issue, but now they must do it because of even if the relatively strong measures Australia has done, but Australia need to do because they failed it this time.
Yes, Satura Nagal, thank you very much for joining us here on NewsX World. It's always a pleasure to talk to you. We now move on, and some news from South and Central America. Thousands of Hondurans rallied at the presidential residence in support of the ruling Libre Party. President Xiomara Castro accused election authorities of manipulation and warned of an electoral coup targeting her party. Castro also criticized US President Donald Trump for endorsing a rival candidate and threatening to pardon former President Juan Orlando Hernandez. The special audit of the late November presidential election remains stalled amid protests blocking the electoral centre, delaying a final result. With nearly all votes now tallied, right-wing candidate Nasri Asfoura leads by over 43,000 votes against centrist Salvador Nasrallah. We now move to some news from the tech world, and Google has unveiled its new Gemini 3 Flash model, aiming to challenge OpenAI and rivals with a faster, cheaper form of artificial intelligence. The model combines Gemini 3 Pro's reasoning power with efficiency, becoming the default in the Gemini app and Google's AI search mode. Gemini 3 Flash can process videos, images, audio and text, helping with tasks from last-minute travel planning to learning complex concepts. Salesforce, Workday and Figma are already integrating the new model, which outperforms Gemini 3 Pro in coding benchmarks. The launch comes days after OpenAI released ChatGPT 5.2, highlighting the intense competition in AI, with Google leveraging its global reach through search and apps. Joining us now is Sumraj Bhattacharjee, an AI and market strategic expert, joining us live from New Delhi. Thank you very much for joining us. The AI race certainly is on. Of course, Google says Gemini 3 Flash is both faster and cheaper while matching this pro-level reasoning. Is this a genuine breakthrough, or are the likes of OpenAI, DeepSeek, etc., similar in regards to results?
Hi, thanks for having me. That's a great question to start. So the most important thing to keep in mind is that most of these chatbots, they operate on LLMs, which basically do synchronous reasoning. Gemini 3 Flash and this new version, which has been launched recently, seems to be positioned to solve the System 2 style of deep reasoning. Now, what is that? System 2 basically is about multimodal solutions of problems. Now, what that means is that it can analyze multiple sources of data sets at the same time parallelly, that is simultaneously. For example, it can analyze long documents, it can solve complex workflows, it can hallucinate less. We all know that AI tends to hallucinate a lot more. So these are certain native multimodal solutions that are being claimed by Gemini 3 Flash right now. And if it's actually true, well, the proof of the pudding is in having it. So until unless people use it, nobody can say how good or bad it is. But at least technically speaking, yes, it is a multimodal solution flow. It is supposed to be more able in solving complex workflows. So yes, it is definitely better than some of the other platforms available in the market.
Yes, Sumraj Bhattacharjee, thank you very much for joining us. Unfortunately, we've ran out of time this hour, but really appreciate you taking the time. Well, that's all that we have time for. Keep watching NewsX World for more news updates from around the globe. Thank you.